So, welcome Mark Nepo to Livs Energy.
Oh, it's great to be with you. I so appreciate it.
You know, to me, Mark, you are quite new actually. I found you kind of uh, thanks to the Danish book club that is almost the same as we. They bought your book, The Book of Soul, and this is the book I need to have.
Oh, well, thank you.
So tell us about you. Who are you? Because I think, or am I right, that this is your first book that will be launched in Swedish?
I believe so. I have had my books have been translated into many languages, but I think this is the first time in Swedish. Yes.
Hmm. We're happy to be the first.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So, I'm a lifelong teacher and a poet, philosopher, and a long-term cancer survivor, and so which has changed everything in my life. And so, I've been blessed to, I love being with people on the inner journey. And I've been blessed to be prolific because I write about what I need to know, not what I already know.
Oh.
And so there's a lot I don't know.
And what about ours? What about us then? Because I know that you, as a philosopher, you have a lot of thoughts, and you are fantastic with words.
Oh, thank
So
you.
if there's a lot of things that you don't know, there's a lot of things we don't know.
Well, we're all, I believe, in conversation with life and the universe. And there are many ways that that happens, but it always, for me, it happens through our heart.
Mhm.
And our heart will lead us to what we care about. And through that, the language of our care, we stay in conversation. It's like a fish finding the current in the stream and letting the stream carry it. So, some of my background, I'm 71. Years ago, if I met someone my age, I thought they were very old. It doesn't seem so old now. Um, and in my 30s is when I had a rare form of lymphoma, which I almost died from. And the 3 years that were the heat of that journey, transformed everything in my life. And let me first say that I believe that everyone will have the chance to be dropped into the depth of life. And often it can be a life-threatening event, but it also could be love or wonder or joy or surprise or beauty. It doesn't have to be difficult, but that's just what happened to me. And during that time, I would say a couple of things happened that transformed me. One was that um, I was raised Jewish. I have a great tie to the Jewish heritage. But through almost dying, I've become a student of all paths.
Mhm.
So I was blessed to have people from all traditions, formal and informal, offer me blessing and help. So when I was blessed to still be here, I was not, and all these years later, I'm still not wise enough to know what worked and what didn't. And so I was challenged to believe in everything. And so that changed all my work, all of my books, all of my teaching is all centered around what I believe is a common center to all paths and the unique gifts of each. And so, I think I like to think that being a poet is how I see. Being a philosopher is how I try to understand what I see.
Yeah.
But being a cancer survivor is how it's so important to me that what we learn has to be of use. How do we make it of use? How do we personalize it? The other thing that really changed for me during that experience was that um, ever since then, my mind serves my heart and not the other way around. So everything dropped from my head into my heart going forward.
Mm. That's a way a lot of people would like to live their lives, I think. When is there a moment or a specific time where you felt that happen, where you could actually feel that, okay, this switch has now occurred?
Well, I think that, it started, but, at that time in my early 30s, I hadn't been through anything challenging like that. And so before that, I was a driven young artist,
Mhm.
and uh,
Artist in what field?
oh, in poetry and writing and literature, um, but I feel that the very embodied realness of the journey pulled me out of my head. And so I remember that, there was no way that my thinking was going to get me through this experience. It had to be through meeting each experience in a felt way. And so I was drawn, dropped more and more into the living of things and the feeling of things and the direct connection with people.
So looking at your way of looking at the world today, and because I know I've heard that you're quite spiritually interested as well, and so how is your relationship to the Jewish tradition and to the rest of um,
Yeah,
whatever
so
is on the
I
table?
don't I don't practice any one. I mean, I believe that how certainly we can practice any tradition. For me, as a student of all paths, I don't practice any one tradition formally. For me, spirituality is the embodied connection of the part to the whole,
Mhm,
of the living part to the living universe.
mhm,
And so, what is our relationship? So, if you believe in anything larger than yourself, I would say you're a mystic.
mhm,
Now, when we start to name what's larger than us, then everybody goes to their corners. It's Jesus, it's Buddha, it's Moses, it's Allah. Well, as the older I get, I don't really, or you could say it's everything or it's nothing. You could say it's science, it's nature. There's 1,000 names for what's larger than us. I'm more interested in how we relate to everything larger than us. What are the physics of being a human being in a body and time on earth? It doesn't really matter what we call it. I could have just as meaningful a conversation with an atheist who believes in nothing, which is larger than them. I just call it everything. So we can still talk. And uh, so for me, spirituality is, and our spirit, our soul, to me, is the portion of universal spirit we carry in the time we're here.
yeah.
And so the question is, can we each be a good steward of the portion of universal spirit we're blessed to carry while we're here?
Mhm. I hope so.
I hope so too.
So, the Book of Soul, it's been written in a special way. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that we will continue this conversation while looking at the book a little bit, because it's a
Sure.
book on of the soul.
Well, the Book of Soul is actually my 22nd book. Hard
Oh,
to believe. And it for me, it is a book that was, every book is an inquiry
mhm,
and a continuation of that conversation with life. So each book I learn something and that leads me to learn a little more. So this book, after all this time, was kind of an integration of trying to look at the things that have taught me, have been teachers, and how do they all go together? So it was an integrative book for me. And so in terms of its format, I made 52 chapters or pathways um, to the soul and to the heart. Not necessarily the only ones, but more like we're casting seeds. I have to send out a lot because I don't know which one will touch you,
Mhm.
just like how seeds pollinate in nature. So I did 52 so that it could frame a journey over every week over a year. And what's important to me with my readers is I invite you to take your time
Mhm.
and not read the book all at once, but to read a chapter, then live your life, then read a chapter, then live your life, so that there's a way to see where these things live in your heart and in your days, and come back and forth. And you probably notice that at the end of chapters in my books, I offer uh, journal questions and conversation dialogue questions. I like to say table questions that you can explore with a friend or a loved one across with a cup of coffee or tea. Again, so that we see, where does it live in your life? So the things are only abstract if we don't personalize them. So in terms of the themes of the book, I there's a central metaphor in the beginning of the book about how really, our first labor in getting here, of course, is our mothers wonderfully go through all of that to bring us into the world.
Mhm.
And then I think we start a second labor, which is through the years how the soul is birthed through experience on earth. And that's the journey of our initiation and transformation and uh, arriving at a wholehearted wakefulness
Mhm.
from which we can really appreciate what it means to be here and the miracle of being alive. I think one of the integrating things for me in this book is, every tradition wonderfully has its community space, whether it's a congregation or a temple or a sangha, or a mosque, or just even, a circle of friends, and that's wonderful. And I've started to realize what through this book that, but it's all for the walls of those temples to come down.
Mhm.
So because the temple is the world,
Yeah.
how do we bring that love and that sanctity everywhere we go? And I think that if we're, no one can do it all the time, but if we can be awake and aware and caring and and stay close to our authenticity, then the temple is the world.
Mhm.
One of the things that I believe in just from my experience in my books and in my teaching and being with people, um, is that I personally don't believe in a arrived state of an enlightenment. Maybe that happens to some very, very, amazing people. I don't know. But for me, it's always been a practice of return. That is, I'm clear today and I'm confused tomorrow. Um, I'm sensitive today and I'm awkward tomorrow. Today we could be having tea and I would be so in tune that if you knock your cup, I'll catch it before it hits the floor. And tomorrow I might spill it on you. And because we're human. And so I believe that the spiritual journey is we gather tools in our personal toolbox so that we can return to center when life throws us off.
Mhm.
It's always a practice of return. When I was a boy, my father, who's now gone, but he was a master woodworker and he loved the sea, and he built a sailboat that I spent a lot of my youth on. And our dog is right here. Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of our youth on. And When I was a boy, he had me steer the sailboat by a compass through a fog. Now, if you've ever had a chance to do something like that, even if you're on course, the compass never stays still. It's always moving. So even when you're on course, it's always a little left, a little right. You're always course correcting. And I think that's what the spiritual practice is. We're always course correcting just a little bit. Am I open enough? Am I closed too much? Am I giving or myself away, or am I holding back too much? What am I doing here? And so we have to love the journey because it never ends.
Mhm. That's beautifully said. We have to love the journey. That's part of living life, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we're drawn constantly. I think, life is this unending journey of relationship, of staying true and current with our relationships, with each other, ourselves, and with life itself.
We actually discussed the other day, we discussed the part of the womb and the labor. And we were wondering if there is a second labor, or that we actually, that you believe that we are born spirit first physically and then spiritually again. Are we coming into the world as spiritual beings from the beginning, and then born into the physical body, and then go on to a spiritual journey through life?
Well, I think that, this goes back, and it's not just my thinking. There's a tradition through in many traditions. Plato spoke about it. He said this beautiful thing. He said, "We're born whole,
Mhm.
WHOLE, but we need each other to be complete." And so I think we arrive, and we're all here. We're amazingly, but we don't come alive except through relationship. So those capacities are dormant until love and beauty and suffering bring them out of us. Great love and great suffering are the great teachers. They have always been. And so, in the Jewish tradition in Eastern Europe, rabbis uh, would go through the villages and wake people up with a bell in the morning in the town and yell out Shekinah, which was a Yiddish word that meant the Lord is in exile. And what they meant by that was God is dormant until you're in relationship. So come out, be in relationship. So another way to think of this, a metaphor, is as a wooden match. Now we know that the tip of that match, there's flame in it, but it's dormant until that match is struck against a surface.
Yeah.
And in that way, our gifts are dormant until they strike against the needs of the world, and then they show themselves.
So kind of we don't know our full potential until we connect with.
Until we are drawn into the journey of love. I think that mysteriously life has been made just difficult enough that we need each other to ensure the journey of love.
Mm.
So while no one, this is one of the great paradoxes of life, is that no one has ever been here who's you. No one can live your life or feel what you feel or think what you think or go where you need to go. And no one can do it alone. And so we need each other to bring our full selves into being. I think one of the the of course the pandemic, the virus has been worldwide, but I think another kind of mental virus is the illusion that we think we can do it alone.
Yeah.
No one can do it alone, and I think we are humbled uh, by the journey of life to discover that.
Were you before you before you got your first cancer diagnosis? Did you understand this, or is this something that you understood while battling cancer?
Oh, this is something I understood. through the experience of battling that and of moving through that and being blessed to still be here. You know, I think there's a wonderful parable. Let me tell you that um, uh, that I think is very relevant for our age, and it's two monks study long and hard because they're told that at the end of their study they can climb a mountain and meet with Buddha.
Mhm.
So they study for years, and the day comes, and they're off. And halfway up the mountain, one of them breaks his leg. So they spend the night. The other one tries to keep him comfortable, and he intends in the morning to leave him and keep his appointment with Buddha. But in the morning, the one who broke his leg isn't doing well. He's got a fever. It's not so simple. You can't just leave him. And the parable ends by saying, what would you do? And in an age, if we have more people in an age who will keep their appointment at the top of the mountain than care for their broken other, we have an age that can engender cruelty.
Mhm.
If we have an age where we have more people who will discover that tending their broken other is the summit, we
Yeah.
have an age of compassion.
Mhm.
And we face this choice in our lives every day.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what's on top of the mountain. You can put God, you can put wealth, you can put security, family. It doesn't matter what it is. And there's nothing wrong with working toward things or wanting things. But I have found in my life, humbly, that often working for what I want is an apprenticeship for working for what I'm given.
Mm.
And it's working with what I'm given that has revealed to me my true gifts.
Mm. It sounds hard, Mark, also. Because it sounds like I should always be, or we should always be thinking of our other first. And in another word, in another world, we hear think of yourself first, because then you can, if you are okay, if you feel okay, you can give more love.
Well, I don't think that those things are at odds.
No?
So they are at odds in our world where we have mistaken self interest
Yeah.
as being a God. But if I am this is where authenticity comes in, because by being who I am completely, I will naturally work for my own worth and yours.
Yeah.
We will work together. So I think when we are, my experience is when we are authentically ourselves, it's not a conflict.
No.
I don't have to choose between. It's the fact that, or I don't have to always look to uh, put everyone ahead of me. I have to merely be, I could be, I could be on my way to doing something that's very important to me. Um, and I could be on the way to teaching or to giving a reading in public. And as I'm crossing the street, a woman falls down in front of me. Well, I stop to help her. I might be late. It might not go as planned, but if I don't stop to help her, how can I get up and talk about love?
Mhm. Yeah.
So we have to, there's a story. There's a university here in America that's named after a Buddhist. It's called Naropa University, and
Where
I,
is
I
it?
it's in Boulder, Colorado, and I've spoken there a few times, and I was curious. This leads to a story to what we're
Yeah.
talking about, but I was curious. Well, why Naropa? Why do they call it Naropa? So I met an old professor who told me that the story was Naropa was a world religion scholar in 11th century India. He knew all the different traditions. He was rather well known. And I forget what city in India it was, but he was walking along one day when an old woman with a cane was going in the other direction. They crossed and she stopped and said, "Aren't you Naropa?" And he got all, you know, puffed up, ready to give an autograph. He said, "Yes, I am." And then she pointed her cane at him and said, "Do you know the heart of all those teachings?" And he was caught off guard. He said, "Of course I do." And she went, "Oh, okay." And they started walking in opposite directions. And they got about 20 feet apart, and he knew he had lied.
Oh.
And he ran back and knelt before her and said, "Be my teacher."
Mhm.
And ever since, Naropa has been a symbol of embodied wisdom, not ideas, not principles, not beliefs we tag on a wall, but embodied wisdom that we live. You know, the word authentic comes from the Greek authentes, and it means the mark of the hands. So it's interesting that the heart, so being authentic is what's in our heart comes into our hands. And actually, I learned that when a baby is in the womb, the first thing that grows is the heart. The very next thing, the arms start to grow out of it. They're little arm buds, is what they're called, almost like little red wings. So this is why when we are passionate, we talk with our hands, or when there's a signal like of a heart attack, we feel it in our arm. The heart and the arms are directly connected, and that is at the core of authenticity, where what is in our heart makes it into the world through our hands.
And also, you can think of a hug. You know, when you
Yeah.
hug someone, you can feel the hands. Also, when you hug yourself, the hands do have some kind of connection with the heart.
So when we follow our heart, which is what the word trust literally means, to follow your heart, then the choices between self and other are kind of fall away.
Mhm.
They're not at odds, unless it's interesting. One of my other books was a book on the history of community called More Together Than Alone. Um and in there I discovered in a lot of cultures throughout history that when we're afraid, we think self-interest will save us.
Yeah.
But suffering affirms that we're more together than alone.
Mm.
That's an illusion. All we do is isolate ourselves.
How have you lived through what you're saying? It gives me an idea, or I I find it interesting hearing your thoughts about what happened during COVID and the pandemic. How did you live your life then? A lot of people isolated themselves.
Well, I feel like we certainly had to be physically distanced, but not emotionally or spiritually isolated. So one of the things that happened for me during the pandemic is it reminded me of an important moment in my cancer journey. So when I was diagnosed, I had a tumor in my skull bone, and so when I went to the doctor finally and found out that I had cancer, a rare form of cancer, um, the door that I had gone through to keep that appointment when I went to leave was gone. That is, there was no way back to life before that moment. And I feel like the pandemic has done that for humanity. The old world is gone. It's gone. The only way forward is to love each other forward.
Yeah.
And we have all pockets of society that don't want to accept this, that are in denial. It's a hoax. It didn't happen. There's no virus. Or we have another part of society that's stuck in anger. You're not going to tell me to wear a mask. What are we protesting biology? What are we protesting? But That old world is gone. And so, in the Jewish tradition, the word Sabbath means the one day a week we don't turn one thing into another. And I feel the pandemic forced the world into a global Sabbath.
Mm.
There's nowhere to go.
Mm.
You can't run, you can't walk, you can't hide, we can't even dream. We have to face the miracle of what is.
Yeah.
What is here as it is enough. It's more than enough if we open our heart fully to life and each other.
Mm.
So now, so what happened when like the pandemic or in our own lives when major things happen, it's made me realize that there are three kind of archetypal questions that are always come to the fore.
Mm.
One is uh, what needs to be repaired. The second is what needs to be reimagined. And the third is what, now that it's broken, what needs to be left dismantled? It shouldn't be put back together.
Exactly.
So both personally and in society.
Yeah. So learn new, unlearn certain things. Mm.
Yeah. And so one of the things is now that we've been forced to be still, how much speed do we need to resume?
True. So, one thing or three things that I see when reading your book. Sometimes I get to think about someone else. What's his name? A German guy who the power of now.
Oh, Eckhart
Eckhart
Tolle.
Tolle. Eckhart Tolle. Some people put put some kind of, how do you say, when you equivalent to Mark Nepo is the United States Eckhart Tolle. Have you heard
Oh,
that before?
no, I haven't. I haven't heard that, but thank you. That's
They-
very honoring. Thank you.
But some things that I think about when looking at your book is that you are really helping the reader to be be here and now, be present, be conscious, and by doing that, we get closer to our souls or to ourselves and
Yes.
to the inner journey. Does that resonate with you?
Yes, very well said. Thank you. So for me in particular in my journey, and we're all looking, it's as if all the philosophers and all different people are around. Imagine that we're all standing around a lake, and the lake is the ocean of being. And we're all looking at it from our different points and saying, well, this is what I see. Oh, this is what I see. So this is only what I see from where I'm standing on the lake of life. But for me, our our authenticity, our wholehearted living of our lives is what is necessary to fully access spirit. We
Mhm.
can't to me, we can't transcend and bypass our human journey. It's only through our human journey and our authenticity. So when I can feel uh, love completely to the bottom of my personality, I trip into the well of all love.
Mhm.
When I can feel your pain and not put any barriers up, when truly be compassionate, I trip into the well of all pain.
Mhm.
And so, one of the rewards for being wholehearted and being in touch with our lives, it's the gateway to knowing all love and all journey. We start to feel. So, I'll give you an example that really was a big teacher for me. When my father was dying, And he, like many people, he was 93. He had had a stroke. And I was visiting him in the hospital. And I was in a position all of a sudden, I'm sure a lot of adult children have been in. I was feeding him applesauce. And all of a sudden, my heart just broke, and it was beautiful and sad and wonderful and everything. And there was noise in the hall and nurses around, but all of a sudden, everything, my whole life in that moment was I was in this dance with him of putting this spoon in his mouth without hitting his teeth and not interrupting his breathing, tears coming down. There we were. And because I gave over to that moment, I was fully in the moment with my father, feeling what he had meant to me my whole life. And suddenly I tripped into the moment of every adult child who ever fed a dying parent. And in the wonder of that, the mystery of that, I was, by being fully myself, I was given the strength of life beyond myself. And so I'm exploring the notion that resilience has more to do with that than self-reliance. Resilience has to do when I can feel something to the full extent that I can feel it, then I have the company of everyone who ever lived. And that helps me be as strong as I can be and stronger than I can be.
Wow. There's a lot of things to think about here and to feel. Gosh, there's a lot of things to feel, Mark.
Yes. And feelings are the life of the spirit. This is how we know things. And often in our modern world, we're afraid of feelings. But the more we fear them, the more pressure, like if you have a hose and it's kinked.
Yeah.
Well, then when you let it loose, there's a lot of pressure. But if it's open, it just trickles.
Mhm.
So a lot of times we're afraid
Right.
of our feelings because we've we've held them in and there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
But if we let them out, there becomes a natural flow.
Yeah. Good. We should continue doing that. But some people are stuck in their in their work with feelings. Um, Maybe they don't ever open up the flow.
Well, everybody is on their own journey, and
Mhm.
we cannot, this is a paradox for me. I'm a lifelong teacher, and yet I do believe we really can't change anyone.
Mhm.
So how can I be a teacher? Well, I think I've come to believe that being a teacher is like being a greenhouse. We
Mhm.
provide light and warmth for each other, and then those in the that are near that light and warmth will grow.
Mhm.
They will grow in their own shape, at their own pace, in their own way. And so in that way, you can't rush someone to grow. You can't, often when I see people who are stuck, they haven't been broken open
No.
yet. And it's not my place or anyone's place to say, uh, to prescribe how their journey will unfold. But I just know um, that life has been a great teacher. In the Hindu tradition, there is a term upa guru,
Mhm.
which means the teacher that is next to you at this moment. At this moment. There's always a teacher next to us at this moment.
Right now, you're my teacher.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm gonna just, I have tears in my eyes from our deep, fantastic words here. About the Book of Soul. What made you write this book?
at this point in my life, writing in the beginning when I was young and writing a book was like, will I ever finish it? Oh my God. But having written so many books and being in that stream of inquiry, every book, it's how I learn. So every book leads to another inquiry. And this inquiry was into um, more that integrative sense of what have I learned? What has been teaching me through the years? And so every book is like taking a bucket to that lake. And when the bucket is full, oh, that's a book. And you go back with another bucket. And so I think that, some of the things that have been important in this book for me, there's a couple of chapters there. I noticed you had a question there about that. Well, a couple of chapters that are very important. One is on being wholehearted. And again, no one can stay there all the time because we're human, but I'm committed to being wholehearted. And then things happen and I get afraid or I get confused or I get worried or I trip taking the garbage out and skin my knee. And then I'm half-hearted. Well, I'm committed that practice of return to being wholehearted again. So the question is, how do I do that? What are the tools in my toolbox? What do I return to have me become wholehearted? And I can tell you a story about that. But the other two like very important chapters for me. There's a chapter called Student Self and Teacher Soul, and it seems that we have two parts to us. We have this deeper inner voice, and we have the part that moves through the world and navigates circumstance and things in the world. So the part of me that's the student self is always kind of, managing time and problem solving. And if I hit something difficult, I may turn to my inner voice and say, well, what should I do? And our inner voice tends to not give us a straight answer. It says, well, what makes you think this is a problem in the first place? And then now I'm in a conversation. My part of me in the world goes, oh, thanks, that's a lot of help. but but our teacher soul says, no, lean into this more. Lean into this more. What is there for you to learn? What do you, maybe it's not a problem to solve, maybe it's something new to hold. So we're always in this conversation between our deeper soul and our student self on how to move things. And so again, everybody has that. How can we encourage our each of us to become more intimate with that conversation? And the third chapter in there toward the end of the book, which is just, very, um, it kind of evokes a vow for me, and it's called try, accept, begin again. Try, accept, begin again. And this seems to be a pattern of practice for each of us. We need to try whatever's before us. Whatever happens, we need to accept so we can learn, and then we've got to begin again. We've got to begin again. And so those kind of are three big teachers for me. But the story I was going to tell about being wholehearted is this is an ancient Hindu teaching story about pain and fear. And so there's a master and apprentice. There's always a master and an apprentice. And the truth is that um, the master finds the apprentice very annoying because the apprentice, all he does is complain, complain, complain. So the master says to the apprentice, I want you to get a handful of salt, put it in a glass of water, and bring it to me quietly. So the apprentice brings it. The master says, drink. He drinks and he spits it out. What's the matter? Apprentice says, it's bitter. Master says, get the same exact amount of salt and follow me quietly. So the apprentice gets the same handful of salt and follows the master, who leads him to a lake. He says, put the salt in the lake. He does. He says, now drink. So the apprentice kneels down. He scoops water up. It dribbles down his chin. And the master says, well, and he says, oh, it's fresh. The master looks at the apprentice. He says, stop being a glass, become a lake. Stop being a glass, become this a lake. This is an ancient anonymous teaching story. And what's so beautiful and powerful about it is that it says one thing is that we all get a handful of salt. Nobody gets through life without their handful of pain or fear.
True.
Everyone gets their salt. And you might hear this story and say, well, it's better to be a lake than a glass. Why? Because what he's telling the apprentice is when we are met by pain and fear, the only thing we can do is enlarge our sense of things
Mhm.
so that it right sizes it.
Mm.
We can't eliminate pain and fear, but we can right size it. And if we stay small, we'll become bitter as well. So we may hear this story and say, oh, well, it's not good to be a glass. I won't do that. Well, yeah, yes, you will, and I will, because that's how pain and fear say hello. We tighten up, but it doesn't have to stay that way.
No.
So the question again is, in being wholehearted, what are the personal practices by which we enlarge our sense of things so that when fear and pain say hello, we can practice them and become a lake?
Mm. Exactly. Diluted.
Yes, dilute it.
Mm. Become bigger. That's a beautiful story. I like it a lot. I was laughing because I immediately saw the. Hmm. So you are a teacher also. So from this beginning, well, I guess that you've always loved writing, but you are also, is it an English teacher?
No,
No?
I'm a spiritual guide, a teacher, out of my books and
Mhm.
out of this lifelong inquiry. So, I teach I in retreats or conferences, circles with people to explore these very things.
Hmm. I thought you also had, you know, that you worked as a teacher in schools, etc.
No, well, I
before.
mean, years ago, I did teach at the University of Albany, and I taught in the English department. But for the last 20 years, I've really just been teaching, traveling and teaching out of my books and opening up these questions with others and exploring with people.
I also know that Oprah loves you,
Oh, she's been very kind and generous. Yes.
but she's also smart to find the best of the bests
Oh, thank you.
in the
Thank
field. Yeah, it's she's a lovely guide actually to follow in many ways because she has a wide how do you say arena. She
Yes,
knows.
no, she is amazing. She is very generous and is an amazing bridger. She bridges so many worlds and people.
And people definitely. So we have a question from one of our readers. I put out in our group that I was going to speak to you,
Oh,
and she doesn't know about the book yet because it hasn't come out, but she still asked me to ask you. So, what are your poems about? So we are launching the Book of Soul, and you've written fiction books, non-fiction books, and you're a poet. So, what do you write about when in poems?
so first off, poetry for me is the unexpected utterance of the soul.
Mhm.
It's not about stanzas or lines or how it appears on the page. And so in that regard, everyone, when they're being authentic and wholehearted, is a poet. I just happen to write it down. We don't all write it down. And the poetry actually is the heart of all my work. It's the way I see and retrieve and understand. And my books, the Book of Soul is poetry. It's just in a larger canvas.
Mhm.
It's a quality of wholeheartedness and perception, not so. The poems are actually the heart. And let me share a poem with you.
Yes, please.
And so my poems are the ways that I initially explore the very things we're talking about. This is a poem that I wrote during the pandemic, and it's a poem that I couldn't have written. It's a poem looking back at how I've been. It talks a lot about what we were talking about earlier about whether we keep the appointment on the mountain or or work with others as they present in our life. This is called Praying I Will Find. I used to have so many plans, good plans, grand plans. In the beginning, I would be annoyed by the calamities I'd meet along the way that would keep me from my plans. I used to pride myself on how I could get back on track so quickly. But the more I loved and the more I suffered, the more my plans were interrupted by those in need. Eventually, the call of life, unexpected and unrehearsed, made Swiss cheese of my plans. Now, like an emperor undressed by time, I wander the days naked of plans, praying that I will find love to give and suffering to heal before the sun goes down.
Beautiful.
Well, thank
From a place of, it sounds like you're in a place that's new to you.
well, it's ever new,
Mhm.
ever new. It's I think that I've been living like that, but now as I reflect back, I see that change has been happening.
Mhm. And it's okay.
Oh, it's more than okay. It's wonderful.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, I'll email it to you so you can share it back.
Thank you very much. I will share it back and also in this video. So thank you. That's the question. That's the answer to one of our readers' question, and I will
Oh,
let her know that you have said hello. So you have told us your favorite ish topics from the book. Thank you very much. Um, Also, I mean, looking at the topics that you write about love, relationships, you write about the soul, compassion, sorrow, grief, everything that has to do with life. Um, I feel that the three topics that you mentioned are close to you, but looking at the larger life, not just this book, is there or are there any topics that are more important to you?
well, I feel, and I have always, I feel like the heart is our greatest teacher. It's also, I think, our strongest muscle.
Mhm.
And so I am a devoted student of the heart.
Yeah.
The heart is the inlet between our individual lives and spirit.
Mhm.
And so I am just committed to learning about the heart, how it works, emotionally, spiritually, in each of us, between us. So that's really one of the key themes in all my books.
Yeah. Do you have what strikes me talking about this now? Do you have any tips of how to disconnect the mind and stay with the heart? Because what I'm thinking about is that many times when you're feeling, you feel from the heart, but all of a sudden you get lost in that feeling because the
Yeah.
mind takes you somewhere else.
So I would offer two things for me that have always a practice to return to. One is holding nothing back, is giving my full presence and attention to whatever is before me,
Mm.
to whatever is, forgetting making sense, forgetting agendas, forgetting, you know, just like if I'm knotted in my mind or something, I will try to give my full, like out my window is a tree budding. I'll try to give my full presence to that until it becomes my teacher.
Yeah.
It could be dust on the windowsill, but to hold nothing back and give my all, full attention. And the other is, and we all struggle, I do too, because we're human still, but is when, the mind wants to go over things over and over and over. And so the only thing to do is to drop it. It's precisely when we're hooked and we don't want to drop it. So there's a small poem of mine that speaks about this. It's called Practicing. As a man in his last breath drops all he is carrying, each breath is a little death that can set us free. As a man in his last breath drops all he is carrying, each breath is a little death that can set us free. So I try to lean in and hold nothing back, give my full attention to whatever's before me. And I also try, in the midst of feeling like, oh, if I go over it one more time, drop it, drop it.
Are you afraid of death?
I'm not afraid of death. I think I'm afraid of the dying. I think, all that I went through in my cancer journey, I mean, there are 1,000 ways we might go, but I don't feel that I'm afraid of death, but I think I'm afraid of what whatever awaits to go through it to get there.
Yeah. Because we don't know.
No, we don't know. And I think we tend to, I mean, the journey I went through with my cancer journey was long and difficult. So unconsciously I tend to think, oh, well, I guess that's what it would be like to die. But you could die in your sleep, but I associate it with my past experiences of suffering.
Of course. What do you think happens after death?
Well, of course, I have no idea. Nobody does. But I wonder, to me, what feels intuitive is that, like in nature, we disperse and rejoin the fullness of nature. So, in the Hindu tradition, they talk about reincarnation. We in the West make a cartoon out of it. Oh, I was Cleopatra or King Tut, but I'm not sure if that movement is possible, that it's relegated one to one. Like maybe a part of me becomes the nail that holds the barn together.
Mm.
Maybe a part of me becomes the water in the glass you drink. Maybe a part of me becomes a child on another
Mm.
part of a child's vision on another continent. So I think more like, the way pollen,
Mm. Yeah.
I think we rejoin the world of spirit, and who knows how it unfolds
Mm.
and the various ways we are. If we are, earlier I said, I feel like the soul is the part of spirit we carry while we're here. Well, once we're not here, I think it disperses and rejoins.
So our spirit is not ours, but it's not an identity. It's not a unit that only belongs to me, to this body. It's bigger.
It's universal. It's personal in the way that the bottom of a river doesn't own the river, but the bottom of the river is shaped by the river.
Yeah. That's smart, Mark. Thank you. So, our book club members, we love them and we pick the books that we want to have in Swedish. We pick them, or actually, I pick them, and we translate them and give them out to our book club members first of all. So they will have this interview
Oh,
first. They will have your book first before anyone else. So, and it feels so good to kind of give them a portrait and exclusive uh, talks with you. Thank
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited about that and to think that of that being in their hands. Thank you.
you. So, just a few short questions. Um, what what message do you want to send with this book to your new Swedish audience?
Well, I would, as I would to all my readers, I want to affirm their own gifts and their own wisdom. And I hope by being in conversation with the I feel like the book is a window to the things we've been talking about. And by being in conversation with these deeper qualities of living, that they will become more intimate with their own gifts and their own wisdom.
I think you. I think this is a great tool for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And is there anything you'd like to say to your Swedish audience?
Oh, just that. I'm so grateful that you'll be sharing this, and I'm excited to think about that, and just yes, just many blessings, and wonderful to be with you now.
Yes, you're more than welcome. So so today, you know what today is? I don't. Today is in Sweden. We are Protestants mostly. We're not a practicing country. Can you say that? Still, it's Long Friday. It's called in the Eastern. So today is a shutdown day. It's a red day. And so, what would you normally do? I mean, you live a wholehearted life. It takes some time to actually practice that, I would think.
Yeah. Well, so my normal days are, my wife Susan is a potter.
Mhm.
And so we have a studio on our property here for her, and I'm in my study right now, and so our days are, I'm a morning person, she's a night person, so I'm up early and take care of our dog, and then our Zuzu is with me most of the morning, and then in midday we connect, and then in the afternoon she'll be in her study, and Zuzu will go over there with her, I mean her studio, and then usually in the evening, we're just, we do. My wife is a movie buff, so we love to find independent movies and foreign films and watch things, and so yeah, and then also just being with friends and dear ones.
Nice. So you live a flowing life.
Yeah, very simple, and just yes, it's the simple, the blessing of the ordinary. Yeah.
That is a blessing, though. You don't have to strive for something else.
No, it's all right here, wherever we are. Right.
So, where do you live in the US?
I live in a town, Kalamazoo in Michigan, in
Michigan.
southwest Michigan, in the Midwest.
Yeah, that's right. Hmm. Do you have do you have spring there now?
It's just beginning.
Yeah.
Things are budding, and we're getting waves of warm days, though it's not really warm yet.
Mhm. So, do you still have snow?
No, no, snow is gone.
Yeah.
Snow is gone. So we're in April, which is rainy, and everything is, filling up the earth. And
But I can see the sun in your forehead.
yes, there is some sun, a little bit of sun.
That's good. That's good. We have a sunny day here today. It's very nice. So, do you like music?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite artist? Music artist?
Oh, well, a couple of favorites. I mean, uh, I love Leonard Cohen and James Taylor. And in terms of jazz or instrumental, I love Keith Jarrett. Yeah.
Good ones. So do you listen a lot to music?
I do, and I write to music. Music often helps me. Actually, I have a playlist of Keith Jarrett's work that I will play while I'm kind of getting in touch with my feelings.
Hmm, nice. Could you share your favorite song?
Oh, my favorite from him is the second part of Hourglass. He has
Oh,
a Hourglass Part 2, which is on an album I think called Staircase. I'm not sure, but you can find it.
yeah.
Hourglass is um, a wonderful, amazing piece.
I will try it. Sometimes I'm trying to listen to music while I'm doing something to get into focus, but I think it's quite hard with the music that I normally listen to, which is more or less, radio. The
Yeah, yeah,
personal
no, right. It's hard. And Keith Jarrett, he opens up a portal. Yeah, he.
good. I'll check it out. So, what's your zodiac sign? We're happy
I'm
to
Pisces. Pisces.
Pisces. So, you already had your birthday this year.
Yes, it was in February, late February.
Okay,
And I have a lot, and it's just naturally a lot of water images come up for me, even as we've been talking.
oh, behind me?
No, I meant in our conversation,
Yeah.
a lot of water images and metaphors, and yes, I love that behind you. Yes.
Do you believe in astrology?
Uh, well, I believe in everything. I think everything is a tool, and every subject is a way to open up that larger whole of life. I don't
And
know. I don't believe necessarily in any in things being so predictive. I think they're descriptive and intuitive, and they give us lots of information about things that can't be seen. But I don't, it's just like the reincarnation. Oh yeah, you were such and such. I don't think it's prescriptive.
I agree with you. I actually heard on the radio the other day that Burma or Myanmar, they have a lot of astrology in their society. They actually kind of live by
Oh,
astrology, yeah, in many ways. I never knew that, so I
oh
just
wow. Yeah, I didn't either.
fun. So, Mark, I'm gonna let you go. I have hijacked you for more than an hour.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a joy to spend this time together, and thank you for sharing my work. I appreciate it.
Yes. And I am super grateful that I could, and that I could take this time from you and lend you and share you with my book club members. Thank
Oh, well, many blessings. You be well.
you. You be well. Enjoy a lovely weekend now.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.